Look, I love Emily Henry. I love Christina Lauren. I love Ali Hazelwood. The holy trinity of rom-coms, if you will. But we need to broaden our horizons. Hi, if you're new here, I am Tyler, and I make a bunch of nonsense videos about books and marriage and travel and work and the too many iced coffees that I make at home and whatever else is going on in my super average life. And today's video is about books, specifically why you should take a break from rom-com books and try something a little dark and depressing. Last year, I was almost exclusively a rom-com gal. I literally read every love story, every trope, every major rom-com that was on the shelf at that time, I had read it. And while I enjoy rom-coms, I enjoyed it then, I enjoy it now, I think there's a lot to learn from books that are not all about these very idyllic settings with two really hot people that magically end up in a bedroom with one bed. And this is not to say that rom-com books cannot have any depth or emotional meaning or purpose. I think they definitely can. But I think books, in my opinion, are here to teach us things and really give us new perspectives. And that's why some of these more serious books are so important. If you want to know more about the world and you want to understand other people around you better, we need to, like I said before, broaden our horizons. Like I said, all last year I read almost exclusively rom-coms, so I am still in this new era of exploring different genres and different authors that, are award-winning authors, and I never even knew who they were because I just put myself in this one little reading box, and it's such a waste because there's so much to read out in the world. There's so much to learn and so many stories to be heard. And I'm not going to be able to know those stories and get to know these other authors unless I step outside of my box. So in 2025, I have made it my mission to step outside of my box, my little rom-com reader's box, and explore different genres to see what I can learn. So far, I have read genres spanning from dystopian, queer love, anti-war, self-help, and then some novels that really they don't even have a genre. They just have their own little space. Did these books give me cute little butterflies the way that Emily Henry books do? No. But did I feel like I learned something and gained a new perspective? Absolutely. If you don't want to read a book that is going to make you super uncomfortable because it's too dark or too weird, I recommend looking into the books that are often read to students. That might sound really weird, but hear me out. There are some really popular books that tackle more serious storylines and more serious social problems, and maybe they're just a little bit darker, but they're really popular, so I jumped right onto those. And that was a little traumatizing, if I'm going to be honest. I think those kinds of books you need to wade in very gradually. So start in the shallow end with the books like, The Things They Carry, which is a fantastic anti-war book, often read in high school or college. It's not too graphic, it's not too dark. It's enough to definitely give you something, a new perspective, or make you think a little bit harder about the Vietnam War and all the things in that book. And then, after you've passed that, you can wade a little bit deeper into the really traumatizing stuff. You see, my problem is that I did not do that. I jumped straight into the deep end, I shit you not, Tender as the Flesh. For anyone that is not familiar with this book here, which you've definitely seen on a Barnes & Noble shelf before, it is about human cannibalism. I think this book is generally regarded as horror and definitely dystopian, and there are definitely some horrifying and very mature scenes, which is why this would not be suggested to a high school student or even a college student. But what I like so much about this book, despite how terrible the plotline sounds, it is very provocative. It's very thoughtful. It was written with purpose. It's not just horrifying to be horrifying. By the way, quick rundown on this book, if you've never heard about it. This book is about a man who lives in a world where all of the animals became infected with some kind of virus or something, and so they could not eat meat anymore. There was no animal meat left on the planet, or at least where these people are, and so they, out of desperation, resorted to human beings, and they raise human beings and slaughter them the same way that we do with cows and pigs and chickens, which I think is another part of the thoughtfulness. It really makes you think about that industry as a whole and how we look at it, or more like how we avoid it and try not to think about it because it's ugly and nobody wants to think about that. But there's a lot in here, very thought-provoking, and I think realistically it's about human beings and what we're willing to do to survive, and how we can so easily dehumanize one another, which might sound irrelevant because right now we're not in any kind of situation where we're going to be eating each other. But I think this is relevant to situations like wars, famine. All of those things are currently happening in different places in the world, and yet somehow we have a lot of world leaders and people in general who turn the other way, choose not to think about it. That's what it made me think of when I was reading this book anyway, how we dehumanize each other so easily. And there's a bunch of other lessons in the book, but it's a tough read. It got me. So yes, while Tender is the Flesh is very dark, has a lot of heavy scenes, I think it's also saying a lot, and I'm not going to spoil it all. Like, go read it, go find out, and come up with your own thoughts. What does it make you think of? What kind of new perspective do you get from it? And share in the comments if you end up reading it. But I think it's worth reading, as hard as it is. Just be aware. Maybe Google some of the trigger warnings and stuff, because there were definitely some in here that I wasn't ready for, and I should have read about it. I think that this was an incredibly interesting book, and I'd never read anything like it. And this author she's a great author, and I actually picked up another one of her books called I have it here. It's called The Unworthy, and this is a newer one, which I've heard might be even heavier than Tender is a Flesh. I don't know. We'll find out. If cannibalism is not your thing, you can try Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. It is the only novel she ever published, or really it was published on her behalf because she had already passed away by the time that it was published. But that book is about a girl in the 60s, I believe, kind of feeling the weight of the societal pressures of being a woman, particularly being a young woman who is expected to marry and have children at a young age and all this stuff. And she ends up going through some mental health crises, and it addresses how also just the mental health industry at that time, it was not up to par by any means, particularly with women. And it was a very brave story to write at that time. I think it's still very meaningful today because we're still not perfect at what we expect of women and how we treat mental health. I think that's a very important book to read, especially if you are a young woman or if you are a young man and you want to understand women a little bit more and what we face. That would be a good read. If you really want to step out of the rom-com world and find a more serious book that probably has something really meaningful to say, just check out a banned book list. I have been on a mission to buy and read books that have recently been banned in the area that I live in, and they're banned from, I think, just school libraries. I don't know about public libraries, but definitely school libraries. One of those books includes Fahrenheit 451, which I reread recently, definitely Slaughterhouse-Five, which I've also read recently, and another one that I'm currently working on called The Bluest Eye. This book is about an African-American girl who wants to be beautiful, and her idea of beauty is being white. As a white person, I think that these kinds of stories are incredibly important to read. It's very eye-opening, even though, if you grow up in the US and you go to a history class, we know these things, right? Like, we know that we all experience this world differently, but reading it, something so personal, it just makes it feel so much more real rather than just like this random history lesson that you had in 8th grade. The book does tackle other things outside of racial issues. It does talk about child abuse and I think some other heavy material that I haven't even gotten to yet because I have not finished it, but please read the trigger warnings online before you read it. Okay, I'm going to pivot us a little bit because I feel like we've been talking about some really heavy, dark material, and now you're probably really scared and don't want to leave the rom-com reader's box, and I understand that. But it does not all have to be that dark. If you still like romance books, there are other books that are a little bit more serious and mature that are still very lovey-dovey and have a lot of yearning and give you butterflies and all that stuff. I personally liked Call Me By Your Name. I think that's a good one to start off if you're okay reading a queer romance. I think that was like one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read, and it has to do with a relationship happening between two young men in the 1980s, I believe, in Italy. So, beautiful setting, overall very interesting story, and of course now there's a movie. So yeah, you don't have to read anything as serious as Tender as the Flesh or even The Bell Jar. There are still plenty of other options for books that will stick with you at the end. And as much as I love rom-coms, they're not books that stick with me. I usually read them, I enjoy them, I put them down, they go on a shelf, and then I just don't really think about it after that. They're not books that linger on my mind when I put them down, if that makes any sense. Like Call Me By Your Name, Tender as the Flesh, The Bell Jar, those lingered. And I think that's a really powerful thing when a book can linger after you're done. Anyway, I hope that this video didn't scare you into not leaving the rom-com world. I feel like I should not have started this video with Tender as the Flesh, because that's a scary one. But I do hope that you jump out of your comfort zone and try to read something that you maybe wouldn't have a few months ago. And if you do, let me know what you picked up and what your thoughts were. But thank you so much for joining me on this little book talk, and I will hopefully see you guys next time. Bye!